Today, I'm joined by Sam Spencer, who's the COO and co-owner of Aspire Property Group, and they've now delivered over 100 million in property and over 1,000 investment deals. I believe that's still correct. I'm sure it's mounting
Yeah,
all the time. But behind those numbers, I'm thinking about it. I feel there's another conversation around mindset, discipline, and also showing up when things are tough. Because just 7 years ago, I know that you were facing redundancy and potentially going to lose your home. And yeah, just wondered if you might like to speak a little bit about that and how mindset has sort of carried you through the tough times.
yeah, great question. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate
Welcome.
it.
You're
Like you
very
say,
well.
thank you. No, as I said, for those who don't know, my name is Sam. I'm COO of Aspire Property Group, who were a group of businesses all built around property, so they all connect to each other in quite a deliberate way. We've got the property side of the business, letting agency, estate agency, hands-free portfolio building, and then the education side of things as well. So yeah, for me, in terms of going back to that time, it was a pretty dark time for me.
Yeah, it must have
And I
been.
think some people think about, well, what got you through it? Where did that mindset come from? And I think a lot of people expect me to say, I had a vision, and I think that matters. But
No.
to be honest with you, what drives me now more so is fear. I'm massively
Really?
motivated
Okay.
by fear.
That was not
Yeah.
what
And
I
I
was
think,
expecting you to say.
yeah.
Interesting.
I am. I think it's something that people don't really talk about enough. We live in this world of vision boards and
Yeah.
manifestation and picturing the life that you want. And I love all of that. I love all that visual representation of what you're
Yeah.
working towards. But I think the problem with that nobody talks about really is you've never been there before. You've never lived that life. So
That's
I
true.
found it quite hard to emotionally connect to something that I've never experienced before. So for me, I have not just a vision board, but I have something that I call a nightmare board as well.
I
So
like
I
it.
have a nightmare board, which is it's probably more powerful for me, to be honest,
So
because
what does that
go on.
represent then? Is that where you don't want to go? Is that the idea behind
Yeah,
it? Oh, okay.
exactly. So I remember, like you said before, I got made redundant. I
Yeah.
remember that feeling of not being good enough. I remember the feeling of sitting in my car crying, I'm worthless, I'm going to lose my house. The fear of having worked hard, played by the rules, added value, and then you just let go like a number. And it was a really, really dark time for me. And I think the nightmare board kind of keeps it alive a little bit, not to torture myself, but because I don't want to go back there.
No,
So
obviously. Yeah.
that kind of version of that feeling kind of lives with me. So
Wow.
I find that people I speak to, either investors or mentees, and they're motivated either to get towards pleasure or get away from pain. And in my experience, often getting away from pain is a much stronger force.
It's a
And
much stronger driver. Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
kind of
agree.
lean on that. So even now, I'm still motivated by fear, really, rather than getting towards pleasure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, if I guess the next question then would be maybe what if you did lose it? If the worst were to happen now, how would you regroup? What would you do?
Mm.
Have you learned along the way different
Yeah,
things?
I think that's a really great question because one thing that I didn't quite comprehend is the amount of emotional growth that I had to go through
Yeah.
to become the person worthy of ultimately the things that I said that I wanted. And I think, back if we went back maybe 7 years when I was living on my wife's income, it was all about pedestalizing money. That's where I was at. And I suppose being envious of people that had money. And now more so, I'm more impressed by who that person is because I know when somebody's successful, whatever that means to them, it could be financially, for example. I know the things they've had to go through to get where they want to be.
Yeah.
I think it's that really, in that it's a bit like, if you were playing a video game, and you wanted to go to the next level of that video
Yeah.
game, well, you have to go through some sort of difficult challenge to get there.
Yeah.
So if you want resilience in your life, you want to be more emotionally resilient, then the universe or the world will present you with situations that force you to develop that resilience trait, right?
Mm.
So I always say to mentees, careful what you wish for, because
Yeah.
life will give you the things that will get you where you want to be. So I think over that time, I have been through the challenges and kind of built the calluses
Mm.
that if, for example, I was to lose it, I believe I have the ability to be able to regroup and implement the skills that I've learned.
Yeah.
And you see it time and time again, don't you? I think the stats are for those people who win the lottery, over 90% go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And for me, that's because if they've never had £10,000, £50,000, £100,000 in their bank, how do they manage it when they've got a million or 10 million or however much it is?
Yeah. It's just
Whereas,
overwhelming. Mm.
yeah, it's overwhelming. They've not built that emotional resilience to be able to deal with that amount of money, or they've not built the systems and processes to be able to allocate and deal with that amount of money. On the
Mm.
flip side of that, how many times have you seen it that a millionaire goes bankrupt and within 6 to 12 months they've got it all back again?
Yeah. Very, very true. Really
In the
interesting
entrepreneurial
insight.
world, it can often
Yeah.
be a badge of honor, going bankrupt. It's part of the process.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think most millionaires have failed about 7 times. Isn't that the statistic? Seven
yeah,
failed businesses or something. And it's so refreshing to hear you talk like that because there's so much on social media about, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, and nobody talks about the mindset that actually gets you there. People might post pictures of themselves in the gym, but it's not quite what you're describing there. It's much more nuanced than that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting.
no, it's great.
I obviously follow you on Instagram and so on, and I love your motivational things, that the little hacks that you give, and I just wonder where that there was one that stuck in my mind, and it was I don't feel like going to the gym, but I'm doing it anyway. I don't feel like going and doing this call, I'll do it anyway. I love that. I've sort of got it written on my phone now, and I just wonder where that is. That something that you learned along the way?
Yeah, I think that motivation for me, it's even that word motivation, it's a bit like, let me ask you, what is something that you genuinely love doing that's outside of work?
I don't know, lots of things, walking, cycling, swimming.
When you love doing something,
Yeah,
whatever that is, some people it might be listening to music, others it might be cooking or
yeah,
gardening or
yeah.
walking. Do you need to feel motivated to do the thing that you love?
No, you just do it, don't you?
No, you do it because
Yeah,
you love
yeah,
it,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that motivation question doesn't really enter into your head when you're doing something that you love. So
No.
maybe it only exists when you're doing something that you don't want to do. I think sometimes people confuse motivation with gaining momentum, and momentum is something that you can create, not just something that arrives. So, for example, there are days when I wake up and I don't want to get out of bed. Nothing's clicking, the energy's not there, my enthusiasm's not there, and the
Yeah,
list of things I do feels just endless.
yeah.
And on those days, if I start and try and do the hardest thing, the most important thing that requires the most from me, I'm going to resist it. And I'll find a way to avoid it. I'll find a way to look busy, and I'll just lose the whole morning because of that. And I try and tell myself something's easy. I try and look at the path of least resistance. So instead, I'll start something that I genuinely enjoy. And that for me might be spending an hour looking at AI, testing a new tool, building something small. I really enjoy that kind of thing.
Oh,
Maybe I do
lovely.
that first. And that's definitely not my priority right now, but I do it because it creates a win. And that tends to shift something in me. So by the time I've done something I've enjoyed, I've got a bit of momentum and I can maybe move on to the things that actually I just need to do. And the day kind of then builds on itself rather than grinding to a halt before it
Oh,
started.
I thought you were going to say, I eat the frog first thing in the morning. Do the toughest task, get on with it. But I much prefer that. You sort of ease yourself in by doing something that's more appealing, and then you gather momentum from there. I like
Yeah.
that. It's a really great
I also
idea.
use a framework as well that we teach mentees called 135. So
Oh,
135 is one thing that I must do today, no matter what, three things I should do, and five things I could do if everything's going well.
Yes.
So even on my worst days, I'm committed to doing one thing. But in the vein that I just described, I don't always start doing that one thing. I start with something maybe from the five list, something that's lower resistance, it's easy, I kind of want to do it, I enjoy it. Then
Yeah.
once I'm moving, I get onto that one thing that matters most.
Yeah.
So again, the other thing that keeps me going on the bad days is fear. So that discipline is not really about willpower or motivation. It's about I'm not going back to where I was before. So it's looking at the system that I have in place to fall back to, but also the fear of, well, I'm not going back to that. So
Yeah.
I've then built kind of non-negotiable systems that I fall back to when things are maybe not going so well. And I'll be honest with you, in terms of my motivation, how many days of the week am I jumping out of bed? One, maybe, you know. So if I
And
only did things when I was motivated, I'd only maybe do one day a week. So I have to fall back to kind of systems to kind of gamify things, to
yes.
just get me moving and gain some momentum. And then things start to flow from there.
Yeah. So it's more about frameworks than say punishing yourself. Come on, you've got to do this. And are you a
Yeah.
very early riser? Are you one of those people that gets up at 5?
I am, yes, but not out of choice, really.
Oh,
I've got a young family. I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-month old,
oh yes.
um,
That can be a
which
deciding
has
factor.
yeah, which makes things very busy. And I
Yeah.
like to have time to me. And what I'm trying to do, Isabel, and I don't know if I'm doing a good job or not, is I'm trying to be the best version that I can be for everybody. And it's a constant battle for me, and it's
That's
a
a tough
constant mental
call.
struggle as
Yeah.
well. And it's constant guilt sometimes as
Yeah.
well. In
Yeah.
that, when I want to be dad, I want to be the best dad. When I'm in business, I want to be the best businessman. And I find that getting up earlier than the family allows me to get certain things done to feel like I have some balance. So I get up at 5, definitely not because I want to, because I definitely don't want to. I do it because I'm able to get things done that then allow me to be the best dad further on in the
Yeah.
day rather than feeling guilty because I've got other obligations.
Yes, it is tough when you've got a young family to fit everything in, isn't it? I'm just
Yeah,
that.
something's got to give. Something's got to give, and
Yeah.
at the moment it's sleep, unfortunately.
Yeah, it often is, isn't it? As a parent of young kids, bless you, that's really tough. But what is there one principle in amongst it all that you refuse to compromise on, even if it's sort of inconvenient?
I suppose my biggest non-negotiable that I don't move, regardless of the way that I feel, is training. So either going to the gym or doing some form of physical exercise. It's just a non-negotiable. It doesn't really matter how I feel. I've just found that when I'm training, something physical, I have what I call a floor and a ceiling.
Right.
So, for example, a ceiling would be my best day physically, i.e., I'd go to the gym
Oh,
two
yeah.
hours, I'd do my cardio, my weights, I'd have a sauna, blah, 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 blah. And some people, if they can't do that, they just do nothing. It's like, well, I
Yes.
can't do that. What's the point? And it's like, well, I do have a baseline as well. So when I'm maybe staying away from home, my floor might be I go for a 45-minute walk and do a few press ups. So my minimum I'm going to do is a walk and press ups. The great day is I'm in the gym for 2 hours, and often it's somewhere in between there.
Yeah, that makes
But I do
sense.
find that when I'm physically active, it's great for my mindset because
Yeah,
I think you release all these positive endorphins
100%.
that
Yeah.
enable me to be better in business, and everything else kind of falls into place as well.
Yeah.
And I think that training has taught me so many things that I transition into entrepreneurship as well. In that, in the gym, what you're supposed to do is go and challenge yourself every day. And we go in there, we try and be better than we were before.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Well, you fail every time you go in. And it's quite a positive thing that you go to failure in the gym. But when you bring
Yeah.
it into the business world, failure can be seen as this real negative thing. So it allowed me to learn that failure is normal. And it also taught me about patience and delayed gratification because I think when we enter this entrepreneurial world, we watch the people that we want to watch online and we all buy into this leave your job in 30 days rubbish. The
Mm.
reality strikes, and it's not that easy. And I think, going to the gym once or twice or for a month probably doesn't make any difference whatsoever. But it taught me that the physique that I wanted is probably months, if not years away.
Yeah.
And it taught me that that's normal and that's okay. And I transitioned that into business as well, that, just got to do something today doesn't mean I get the outcome or the result at the end of it.
Yeah, it's just one small step. And it's all about being consistent, isn't it? In both business and your fitness. So yeah, I agree with you. It definitely helps the mindset right across the business and life anyway. And I know you've mentored a lot of investors, and I'm just wondering if there's a common theme between those that become successful and those that maybe fall by the wayside or give up perhaps a bit too early when if they'd stuck at it, they might have made a success of things.
Yeah, great question. I think firstly, something that some people don't like to hear, but I think it's quite important is that winning's not for everyone. And I mean that genuinely. I'm not gatekeeping it just for me, but just an
Right.
honest observation of working closely with people and trying to build something is that most people say they want to win and they mean what they say. But when it comes to actually doing it and doing what is required to have sustained uncertainty for a period of time, the emotional weight, the feeling when nothing's working, there's no guarantee that it's going to work, the process is really non-negotiable. So not
Yes.
everybody's cut out for being winning, whatever that means to them. And I think if you look at the most successful people in any field, there's a direct correlation between one, how much uncertainty they can tolerate. They
Yeah.
become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
I think that success level is determined, but how much discomfort are you willing to sit in without giving up? And I think if most people are honest with themselves, they hit that ceiling way earlier than they expect. I don't say that to discourage anybody whatsoever. I think it's just giving people the reality. I think it's a far more realistic way of doing things rather than selling an absolute fantasy. I'm not telling somebody to quit their job in 30 days in property. The vast majority of people won't do that. There are, of course, anomalies. Of course, there are. But the average person to build something weird, it's gonna take longer than that. It requires more than that. And I think if people do go into it with this fantasy, when the reality hits, the dreams can shatter and they quit. They're more likely to walk away. But if what I find is if I give the honest version of, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Here's the highs, here's the lows. You're probably going to cry. There's going
Yeah.
to be some uncertainty around it. If you're up for that, let's go. And if you're not, that's cool. Not everybody, it's not for everybody. And the ones who go, yeah, I'm all in, let's go, when they do hit that struggle, they ring me and go, Sam, you told me this was going to happen. So this is what we're going to do about it. I think that's really important. I think another thing is speed of implementation. People who take the information on, they're coachable and they implement it quickly, they gain that momentum fast. I think about one mentee recently who never bought a property, came on EPTA. Within 6 weeks, they'd had an offer accepted. It wasn't perfect. They had an offer accepted and they'd sold it to an investor and they made £3,000.
Wow.
And I
That's
think that,
impressive.
the amount of time and effort they put in
Yeah.
probably will be way more than £3,000. But what they learned within that time was really powerful. And I think it was their ability to be coachable, to go and implement things, but at speed as well. So coachability is really important. The
Yes.
ability to hear difficult feedback. I've had conversations in mentoring before. Well, when I tell somebody that I believe their approach is wrong, the numbers didn't stack or whatever,
Right.
and people don't like it, they'll push back, but the people who receive it are maybe the ones more so that go on to do really well. I think the final thing that I see time and time again is in any field in any industry are the best performers are typically the best communicators. So their ability to be able to speak to different people in different ways, whether that be sellers, lawyers,
Yeah,
JV partners, agents, surveyors, each relationship requires quite a different approach. I
yeah.
don't know if you've ever done a wealth dynamics test before.
No, I haven't. No.
No, so have a look at it. It's
What
like a
is
personality test. You might have heard of like
oh,
Myers-Briggs and other. There's loads of other ones as well. But we're within the business, every staff member does a wealth dynamics test.
oh, okay.
I, I really encourage mentees to do that as well. So essentially, it's around different personality types and how different people will have genuinely different strengths and
Yeah,
styles. You've probably had it before yourself where you meet someone and boom, you click, and you're like, I feel like I've known you forever because
yeah.
you've got a similar personality style, whereas you probably had it on the other side where you've had interactions with people where it just feels uncomfortable and it's
Yes.
hard.
Yeah,
And it's a case of, well, how could you adapt your communication style to make it just less hard than what it is?
yeah.
And I think the investors that tend to go the furthest, they have what I call sensory acuity, i.e., they have an awareness over that. They can read the person in front of them and they can adapt their communication style depending on that person. And I think that's a genuine
Yeah, that's a real
competitive
skill, isn't it? Yeah.
competitive advantage. And obviously, very at the start, it's very clunky, but I think once you start learning this stuff and you start to understand the different personality types and maybe what information they would take in. So, for example, one particular personality type, say they call it a blaze, that person's very visionary, less so about the specifics, but they're a
Yeah,
visionary.
yeah.
So if you were, say, there were a dragon and you were raising finance, you going into the real data and the numbers, you've kind of lost them already because they want to talk about what's the vision,
The
what's
overall
special
vision.
about
Yeah,
what you're doing, what's
yeah,
special about you. Whereas you've got another personality style called a steel, and the steel is that's Dan. He's data driven. So if you go through all the vision with the steel, they're going to go, oh, you're missing out the numbers. Let's go through the specific details, the numbers, and how you pick up on which personality style people lean towards allows you to really adapt the way you do things in pursuit of the outcome that you're trying to achieve with that particular person.
yeah. So turning it around the other way, if you are a certain personality, like the visionary or the guy that wants to do all the numbers, can you change your own approach so that you do the numbers when you don't really want to and that sort of thing? Or do you think that's always something you should shop out to somebody else to do, or you
Yeah.
can't overcome it?
I think you should have maybe an overall knowledge of things that go on. However, I'm not a big fan of when people go, work on your weaknesses, make your weaknesses your strengths.
Yeah.
Because going back to what I said before, very often your weaknesses are your weaknesses because you don't like doing it.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
you don't like doing it, you're probably not going to work on it, probably not going to be great at it. Now,
Yeah.
should you have a basic understanding? Yes, but I'd rather you double down on your strengths
Mhm.
and then maybe find somebody else who balances you. You know, they are the kind of yin to your yang, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I must admit, I think about my own life and I think if I had been a different personality, certain things in my life may have turned out slightly differently. But I
Mm.
am this personality and I find it hard to be different. And it's because it's who you are, isn't it? So it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel, I mean, obviously people see the wins from yourself and from Aspire and all the, the great things that you're doing. Is there anything that you personally struggle with behind the scenes?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Oh,
All the
really?
time. Yeah, all the time. I think a couple of things. Two things I'll give you. So one thing is managing the gap between where things are right now and where I know they could be. I hold myself and the business to very high standards, and I think that that's a good thing. It's what drives the improvement. It what drives the kind of refusal to settle. It keeps the bar high. But the other side of that is the gaps that are always visible. You know, you can see the distance between where you are right now and where you could be. And on the days when progress feels slow, something's not moving the way it should, it
Yeah.
creates real frustration with me. I was in a meeting a while back and we were going through some performance metrics across one of the departments, and the numbers were fine by any reasonable external measure. Things were moving in the right direction, but I could see so clearly what it would look like if everything was firing properly. And I remember like having to consciously separate those two things in my head. I want to acknowledge the progress that we're making
Yeah.
and acknowledge the team, but not lose sight of what it could be. Because I think if
Yeah.
you collapse everything into one another, every reasonable result feels like a failure because you didn't reach where you knew you could be.
Yes.
I then become very exhausting to be around because I'm draining people. I'm just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that the wrestle is not like the standard itself. It's, you know, carrying the weight of that standard internally, processing the gap in my head, and then trying not to show up like I'm in a courtroom to staff members. I think,
I like
um,
that.
yeah. And I think the second thing is protecting space to actually think. I know this might sound a bit like a luxury, but I believe it's one of the genuine needs in a senior role. The
Yeah.
higher you go, the more people want from you. In my role, there's always something urgent. There's always something urgent. There's always something that needs a decision, a response, a judgment call.
Yeah.
And if I'm not deliberate about carving time out strategically to think, to just sit and think about my operational strategy for the group, I'd spend all of my time just putting out fires. You know, I'm
Doing
just
something
always
bad.
in the
Yeah.
business. I'm
Yeah.
never on the business
Yeah.
because we all have the same amount of time in a day, right? I always think to myself, what can I do today that gives me more time tomorrow? And what I mean by that is typically it's process, structure, training of the team, could be AI, could be automation. But what could I do today that gives me more time tomorrow? And it's normally equipping the business or equipping the team to be able to manage things more for themselves. And I remember late last year, there was a period where my diary was just back to back, like morning to evening.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down with my PA and we ran through it, and everything was someone else's priority. Everyone
Wow.
thinks their thing is the most important thing. And at the end of the end of the day and end of the week, I just felt exhausted and oddly unproductive as well because nothing in that day
Yes. I understand.
moved my agenda forward. It looked busy, but I was just a sophisticated inbox essentially, you know. And I think
Yeah.
the shift came when I started thinking about time in the same way that I treated important meetings. So I now plan I plan a year in advance. So I block time out, I protect time, non-negotiable, even if it's an hour, that's no phone calls, no messages, no interruptions, where I can just sit with the bigger picture things like where are we going? You know, what's the biggest constraint on us right now? What needs change? When I look at our metrics, we rag them. So we have red, amber, green metrics across the different departments. What are the big picture ones? What are reds? You know, what need my actual time? What am I not seeing? What tweak could I change that would have a bigger outcome?
Yeah.
So that constant battle, I suppose, the tension between being available and being strategic is something that I always wrestle with because again, I'm remote from the office because I want to be available for my direct reports, and being available feels productive in the moment. It feels like I'm leading people, and sometimes I am, but often I need that protected time. But it can be harder than it sounds when people are coming with all of their priorities as well. So it's a constant battle that I'm working on as well.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, isn't it, when you're a leader? It's very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel that leadership has changed you at all fundamentally, or is it just more the strategic and practical day-to-day things that have changed?
Yeah, I think going back to what I said before, I think leadership's given me a deeper understanding of delayed gratification as well. Like I said, with the gym situation, you train constantly, sometimes for years, and you don't see the results that you have. And I think that was a big learning, big preparation for me in business. The decisions that you make today might not play out for a year in the same way a training with a team member that I do may not play out for the next 3 months. I think leadership changed my relationship with pace, I suppose, that I didn't expect. So sometimes you've got to, you've heard this before, where you may have heard this before, you've got to slow down to speed up.
Yes.
You've got to slow down to focus on what you do in the foundations, the structure, to then speed up. But to add another thing into that, sometimes you've got to speed up to slow down, then speed up again. Because sometimes you have to speed up to understand, well, where are the cracks? Where are the challenges? Let's speed up to really highlight the challenges that we've got to then slow down. It's a bit like, to use a very simple analogy, it's almost like a tap. Your whole operational structure is a tap and the pipe work. And at the start, the tap switched on, maybe it's dripping, there's some money coming through, and then there's a few cracks that start to appear. Money's coming out, could be complaints, could be reduced customer satisfaction. And then you're going in ultimately to repair the pipe work to ensure that the money and you get in ultimately the outcome that you
Yeah.
ultimately want. I think uh, that helped me knowing sometimes you've got to speed up to then slow down, and that's okay. I think sometimes you've got to think a bit. I use an F1 analogy with the team quite a lot, Formula One, where if you're constantly thrashing the car around the track, then you're going to have a tire blowout. Sometimes you've got to come into the pits, you've got to change the tires, you've got to work on the engine. And for us internally, that is recruitment, operational efficiency, improving our process, improving our systems, improving the CRM or whatever it might be, to then put the car back on the track and
Go
start
again.
back on the track
Yes.
again. So
Yeah.
it definitely changed that for me. And I think that it also forced me to confront, like I said, how much growth I had to go through. I don't have all the answers, and I let go of the feeling of that a long time ago.
Mm.
Sometimes staff will come to me with a question, and I always felt like I had to be the one that had all the answers. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't have all the
Yeah.
answers, and sometimes it's that's a great question. Let's look at it together. Let's strategize. Let's use some frameworks to actually troubleshoot this together because I don't
Yeah.
know either.
Which is actually a
Um,
great leadership style because it makes the person part of the solution then, doesn't it? And they've got buy into it as well. So I like that.
I think as well, for me personally, it made me better at home,
Oh, really?
because obviously when you have got kids, you've got to have patience. You've got to have clarity on what you want. And when you have a partner as well, and you're both sleep deprived, and you go from it just being you two to then having kids, like sometimes you've got to have difficult conversations in the right way. Those things are just not in the office.
Yeah.
It's how do we have a difficult conversation that maybe we're not ticking each other's boxes right now for whatever that is, and
Mm.
how do we have that conversation that's not confrontational, but it's from a place of, hey, I want to work on this together. So I
Yeah.
think leadership and dealing with personalities and the business and growth and challenges, it's reshaped me kind of across the board, from a businessman to from a husband to a dad as
Yeah.
well.
So yeah, it's affected every facet of your life really then. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. And final question, because I'm aware we're running out of time. What does a good day look like when you actually finally switch off? Because I know you're just 100 miles an hour all the time. What do you do to relax? Is it family or is it training or?
Yeah, great question. There are lots of elements of my role that I absolutely love. It could be work stuff. I absolutely love seeing mentees get results. So it could be helping a mentee.
Oh,
It
okay.
could be working on something bigger picture with the business. Like for example, at the moment, we're buying a property every kind of 10 days at the moment. And we had our first week last week where we bought £1 million of property in 1 week.
Wow.
And I remember Jay, I went away for the weekend. It's my birthday at the weekend, and we went away for the weekend.
Oh, happy
And I
birthday.
was there with Jamie, his partner, and he told me, and I didn't really feel anything. And we kind of brushed it off. And then later on, we came back to it and went, we need to get better at celebrating these wins
Yeah,
because
definitely.
just
That's
brush that off.
amazing.
Whereas I got a message from a mentee called Chris about a month ago, and he'd left his job and he'd done his first 15 grand month. And I felt on top of the world.
You
Like I
celebrate.
felt so good. I don't know why. It was just, I felt amazing.
Yeah,
And I think maybe it was just
congratulations
because it was
again.
outside of me.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Series 27, Real Conversations, Legacy and Motion. I've really enjoyed today's conversation with Sam Spencer. He shared very openly all his business experiences, his challenges and wins and lessons learned along the way. It's these real conversations that make Series 27 so valuable. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please like, follow and share with somebody who may find the content useful. Really appreciate you watching. I've been Isabel Ross Edwards and this is Series 27.